Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
This is NHL Wraparound presented by UBS Financial Services, Inc. We have reached the final night of the 2025-26 regular season. Vic Morren, Neil Smith, we made it to the finish line, partner.
Yeah, we're here. We're here. Only a few little games left out west, and we're on to the playoffs.
So before we get to the intensity and everything that the Stanley Cup playoffs bring, we thought we'd have a little bit of fun today, dress it down a little bit, and we're going to bring back Jeff Marek from the Sheet podcast and, of course, longtime Canadian contributor. And I think this is going to be great to go back and look at the predictions that we made at the start of the season and see how good or not that we did with Jeff.
No, I think it's going to be fun. You know, it's always good to go back and make fun of yourself because you can't get these things right when you're trying to do them in the preseason. But let's see if we came out okay.
Yeah, we don't need predictions to make fun of ourselves.
Yeah.
Before we get to Jeff, 3 things you need to pay attention to. And on Wednesday night, the Vegas Golden Knights clinched the Pacific Division with a 4-1 win over Seattle. Maybe not so pathetic after all, Neil, because Vegas finishes the season with a 10-game point streak and 7-0-1 since John Tortorella took over for Bruce Cassidy behind the Golden Knights bench.
Yeah, I watched that game last night. They were a disciplined team, the Golden Knights were. Maybe not quite as exciting as they used to be, but they were a disciplined team, and they ended up winning that game in the third period. Seattle had the 1-0 lead for a while, and then the Golden Knights tied it up and then took it away from Seattle in the third period. They're going to be a handful in the playoffs.
And they will meet the Utah Mammoth in the opening round of those playoffs. But before we get to them, tonight, as we said, final night of the regular season, and there are still 2 playoff matchups that have yet to be determined. This all concerns teams that are playing tonight. So Edmonton is now second in the Pacific Division, 91 points, 31 regulation wins. Anaheim, third, 90 points, 25 regulation wins. The Kings also have 90 points, but only 22 regulation wins. So here's the way it lays out. 1 point for the Oilers this evening in their game against the Vancouver Canucks, and they will be second and have home ice against either the Ducks or the Kings. The schedule: Anaheim at Nashville at 8, Vancouver at Edmonton, and LA and Calgary at 9. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I don't think all 3 teams are going to win tonight.
No, I've already studied it, and I don't think that they will either. In fact, I think there'll be a change in Anaheim and LA, and they will switch positions. Anaheim will go down to that last wild card spot, and LA will punch their ticket for a date with their old nemesis, the Edmonton Oilers.
What a choice.
Oh.
To have either Colorado or the team that's knocked you out the last 4 years.
But if I had to go with one or the other, I'd take Edmonton every time.
I think I agree. Item number 3, the playoffs are going to open on Saturday and Sunday. We're going to give you the proposed schedule in just a minute. But, Neil, 6 new teams in the playoffs from 2025 to 2026. Newbies: Buffalo, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Boston in the East, Anaheim and Utah in the West, replacing Florida, Toronto, New Jersey, Washington, Winnipeg, the defending President's Trophy winners, and the St. Louis Blues. So in a lot of leagues, and I'll look at the NBA because you know I love to take my shots at them, you see teams that are good forever or bad forever, and there's very little turnaround. But in the NHL, you can go from a high spot to low in a year and vice versa. And I think that's what makes this so exciting year after year.
I do think it's exciting too, but I don't remember ever seeing this many teams flip-flop from one year to the next. You know, usually the teams in the NHL, you might get 2 on one side, 2 on the other, but not 4 on one side and 2 on the other. This is extraordinary.
Let's quickly hit what the proposed TV schedule is heading in through the first week of the playoffs. They will open on Saturday. ESPN triple header, start time for the first game, either 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time. Sunday, 4 games split between ESPN and TNT. On Monday, ESPN and ESPN2 will split 4 games, and we can say that game 1 of one of the series in the Western Conference will take place that night. So they will not play on the first 2 days. Obviously, 3 and 4 on Saturday and Sunday equals 7. So somebody's going to have to wait until Monday. Tuesday, same as Monday, ESPN, ESPN2, 4 games. And then Wednesday through Saturday, April 22nd through the 25th, TNT and TBS will take over while ESPN has their coverage of the NFL draft.
Excellent. Spoken just like a TV exec. Now, if anybody out there can remember what you just said, I want them to write it down and let us know.
That'll wrap up 3 things you need to pay attention to. Now let's welcome in Jeff Marek.
Well, look who's back. It's Jeff Marek from the Sheep Podcast. So happy to have you in.
Listen, I'm happy to be here. And I got to say something here. I know maybe it might be kind of frivolous here, and we don't have to spend too much time on it. But that hat that you're wearing, Neil, as they say at the Bell Center, and as they used to say in the old forum, comme on dit en français, as we say in French, la première étoile, the first star. That old school CBC Hockey Night in Canada hats. Fresh off the runway, look at that, fresh off the runways of the CBC building in downtown Toronto. Neil Smith, he does magazines, he does runway, modeling that hat. Gorgeous. How you doing, boys? How you doing, Vic? How you doing, Neil? Good to be on with you again.
Good. Well, we thought we'd bring you back so we could revisit our predictions.
To roast me.
No, roast us all.
Well, we're all getting roasted here. Let me tell you, we're going to bask in the glow, and we're also all going under the bus at the same time.
Let's do it.
Great, because I wanted to actually do something like this as we got closer to the end of the season. I said, why don't we just go back and take a look at what we said? But there is one caveat here, because at the end of the show, Jeff, you had said that you were going to hold me and Neil to our predictions, but we didn't have to hold you to yours.
That's the way I like it. The law for thee, but not for me, is essentially what I'm getting at here. Yes. Thank you.
The law is pour vous as well.
En français, c'est bien ça.
So we're going to start with kind of the order of the show that we had back in the fall. Okay. And the first thing we talked about was contracts, with Kirill Kaprizov signing that deal for $17 million a year. That'll kick in next season. So he'll jump from $9 to $17 million. He played in 78 games this year. And part of the issue was whether or not he'd be able to stay healthy. He certainly did. 45 goals, 44 assists, 89 points. Now, when you put this in relation to the Kyle Connor deal, that he's going to be making $12 million a year, the Mitch Marner deal, $12 million. This was the first year of his 8-year package. Do you feel the same or different about where this Kaprizov deal stands amidst what the climate is? Something you said we all need to get comfortable with.
We do, and we're going to start seeing more of that in the offseason when the salary cap really spikes. Here's what I liked about the deal then and what I continue to like about the deal right now. And Neil, as a general manager, I ask you to close your ears. So somewhere along the way, and we saw this quite pronounced with the Connor McDavid contract extension, which is one of the best gifts we've seen in hockey in I don't know how long. Somewhere along the way, we went from players saying no salary cap to players saying okay to salary cap. And now somehow players being expected to have the responsibility to manage the salary cap. Oh, I've got to take less because there needs to be room for other players. That's not a player's job. I have no problem with what Kaprizov did. Kaprizov said, this is my price. If you want me, this is my price. It is not my job to manage your salary cap. It is my job to produce to the best of my ability and to help the team. But as far as cap management goes, that's not my job. I had zero issue with the contract then. He has produced for the Minnesota Wild, who are a legitimate contender for the Stanley Cup. I have no problem with the contract now. I'm not one of these people like, oh, he's taking too much money. Now Minnesota will never. Nonsense. You don't get in trouble. Neil knows this. You don't get in trouble when you pay the big guys. You get in trouble when you pay lower down the lineup. Those are the ones that really kill you. So love the deal then, love the deal now. And I'll reiterate, I like it when players say, it's not my job to manage your cap. It doesn't say general manager on my business card. It says player. Talk to my agent. Okay, you can unplug your ears now, Neil. Because what I just said, we got general managers watching and listening to this thing, throwing things at their computer right now.
As Vic, as you know, and you know too, Jeff, I come from a different era of contracts, and so these are astronomical to me. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of the things that Jeff just said make a lot of sense, and that is that it's not their job to manage your budget or their salary cap or anything else. You've got to fit that all together. And you can't use as an excuse to the agent, oh, come on, if I give him that, then what do I do about so-and-so and so-and-so? No. And the other thing I like that you said, Jeff, is that this is my price. This is what I want. If you want me on the team, sign me. If you don't, then I'll go free agent. And I'm going to sell my house soon. And you know what? I'm doing the same thing. My house, I'm putting it on the market for X. That's what I want. Yeah. Don't come to me with something less than X. It's my house. I own it. I don't care what the comparables say. This is what I want. So, you know what? He got the 89 points. He is their best player. Minnesota made a decision that they wanted to keep him. They felt they had to keep him. So, therefore, they had to move to what he wanted. But at least now they know they've got him tied up.
They've got one of the best players in the NHL tied up at a contract that may seem hefty, but you watch these numbers start to roll here, guys. And I think the NHL got lucky. Like Winnipeg got lucky. Edmonton got really lucky. Like there are a lot of teams here. I mean, we all thought, right? We all thought that this summer coming up, it was going to be a bonanza of free agents. Look at all these guys with expiring contracts and feathers. Everybody outside of Minnesota got really lucky because the old philosophy seemed to translate for this year's signings as opposed to what's going to happen starting July 1st. The only one who I would make the argument is thinking new school about the new salary cap about this is Kirill Kaprizov. Because even that contract is going to age well. And eventually we're going to look at that contract and go, you know what? That's a good deal. Like, remember when Nathan McKinnon signed at $6 million and we all went, holy smokes. And then everybody signed for $6 million, right? And we all thought, holy smokes, how can the system handle this? And then 2 years into the contract, we started saying, what a bargain that is for Nathan McKinnon. I don't know that it's going to be 2 years for Kirill Kaprizov, but the way the cap is going right now, which is a great thing for the National Hockey League, first of all, as a great indicator of the economic health of the league, that contract's going to be fine. And Minnesota needs a superstar, right? That market needs a superstar, and they have one in Kirill Kaprizov. And I think we all know how tough it is to get superstars these days.
That's the business. Now we're going to get to the predictions.
Oh boy, here's where here's where I vanish.
Coaches.
Yep.
9 new coaches behind respective NHL benches this year. 3 first-timers. Marco Sturm in Boston, Dan Muse in Pittsburgh, Adam Foote. So as part of this discussion, we asked you who you thought, both of you, would have the biggest impact behind their new bench. And you both said, in Penn, Joel Quenneville, in Anaheim, but in Pencil, Mike Sullivan in New York.
Yep. So right about one and wrong about the other. As it turns out, the Penguins won that coach trade. And Dan Muse should very much be in consideration for the coach of the year. But I mean, listen, I know that it kind of felt like we were roller skating down a gravel road with Anaheim towards the end of the season, and would they make it in and would they not make it in? I know it wasn't smooth sailing the entire way, but this was the first year where I think the Samueli family, owners of the Anaheim Ducks, said to their general manager, Pat Verbeek, we need to start to see a return on investment. You know, we've put up with a lot of rebuilding and the kids and the patience and all of it, but this is the year we need to start to see some type of return. And not that it was all Joel Quenneville, but I think it's hard not to look at Joel Quenneville and say, and see, one, excellent coach, and two, excellent recruiting tool, right? Like all of a sudden the Anaheim market becomes a little more desirable because you get to play for Joel Quenneville. So I think Quenneville helped Pat Verbeek get what his owners have demanded starting this season, and that's their ROI. So for that one, I mean, I love what Dan Muse has done with the Pittsburgh Penguins. How can you not? Specifically, when you look at that back end and say to yourself, how has he worked this miracle? But he has. But yeah, I'll stand by Quenneville. I mean, he got the team into the playoffs, and he got Pat Verbeek to dry his brow. I'm sure he was sweating a few different times this year saying, how am I going to explain to my owners that it's going to be one more year of pain? So I'll stand by Quenneville. What about you, Neil?
Well, I think Joel did a great job with the Anaheim Ducks. I think that Pat Verbeek did a great job recruiting the right combination of elder statesmen to go along with the young players they got coming in. It was a good group. He made the right decision on the Gibson trade, and Dostal has had a good year for them. I think everything that they've done, and Pat Verbeek gets the credit for also hiring Joel Quenneville. So, and those two guys, yep. I think we talked about this before, and you love stuff like this. I know that, Jeff. We asked Pat Verbeek why Joel Quenneville, and of course they go back to the Hartford days together. They used to ride to practice together in the car and talk hockey all the time and philosophies and all that stuff. So they go way back, and he obviously knew what he was getting. I want to go to who we wrote in with pencil, which is Mike Sullivan. You know, the great Mike Sullivan, they won the gold medal in the Olympics. His team did. He leaves Pittsburgh, a team that was out of the playoffs for 3 years in a row. In comes the Rangers assistant Dan Muse, and the Pittsburgh Penguins get better. Mike Sullivan leaves the Pittsburgh Penguins and goes to New York Rangers, and they get worse. Not all just that. That's not the only fact in this. There's many other facts. Hello, Chris Drury, and what you've done. But at the end of the day, the assistant coach of the Rangers, Dan Muse, went into Pittsburgh and got them into the playoffs when Mike Sullivan couldn't. Mike Sullivan came to the Rangers, and what we thought at the beginning of the year, Mike Sullivan will have enough of an impact on the Rangers that they'll be in the playoffs. We don't know how far into the playoffs, but they'll be in the playoffs. He didn't do it. He wasn't able to do it. Not all his fault, Neil, but he wasn't able to do it.
Your pencil has a big eraser if you want to get rid of that suggestion that he was going to turn things around in New York.
Well, I'd like to. Well, in hindsight, I'd like to turn it around.
Can I jump in on this one here really quickly? Because it became pretty obvious. Like further to Neil's point, Mike Sullivan didn't forget how to coach, right? We just saw this at the Olympics. Like Mike Sullivan is a gold medalist from now to eternity. Like Mike Sullivan didn't forget how to coach here. I always look at team situations and ask myself one question. Is the issue coaching or is the issue composition? And when I look at the New York Rangers, I don't say that the issue is coaching. Further, to Neil's point, this is an issue of how this team has been constructed. This is not a coaching issue. This is a composition issue. And until that one gets corrected, I don't care if it's Sullivan, if it's Scotty Bowman, if it's the ghost of Al Arbor. Like, it doesn't matter who's behind the bench for this team. As constructed, this Rangers team is not good enough. It didn't matter who was going to be behind that bench.
Agreed.
Jeff, you had also said something in terms of there's been so much coaching turnover in the NHL over the years, and you thought that there would be more patience this time around in this season. And in fact, I think last year we had maybe 3-4 coaches that were let go before the start of the new year. This year, it didn't happen until January 12th when Rick Bowness took over for Dean Evison in Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 3 weeks later, Smith in LA taking over for Jim Hiller. But then last couple of weeks of the season, Torch takes over for Cassidy in Vegas.
Yep.
And Peter DeBoer is taking over for Patrick Waugh in New York. And on top of that, you also had GMs and club presidents moving late in the season. So how do you explain so much of this executive movement taking place in the last few weeks of the season?
I think teams are very much of the mind that when you look at what the marketplace was going to be in the offseason, like for the New York Islanders, like Peter DeBoer is going to get hired somewhere. By the way, Pete DeBoer, just as a quick aside, when you go back to his junior hockey tenure as a head coach, he's been behind a bench as a head coach for 31 consecutive seasons.
Mm-hmm.
That is unheard of. And I think we all knew that Peter DeBoer was going to end up somewhere in the off season. And you got to hand it to Matthew Darche. He didn't come in right away and say, I'm the new general manager. I'm bringing in my own coach. I'm bringing in all the new assistants and I'm knocking all the chess pieces off the board. He was patient and said, like, okay, let's see what Patrick can do here as I slide in some new pieces, most notably the impending rookie of the year in Matthew Schaefer. But I strongly get the feeling that if Darche didn't make the move when he did, as awkward as it may have been, like four games left, good luck, Pete DeBoer, that he runs the risk of losing him. Because there'll be a lot of teams like, look, we don't know what's going to happen with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but if Craig Berube's not coming back, I would have to assume that Peter DeBoer would be on a very short list of desired candidates for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We still don't know about, you mentioned DJ Smith a second ago, Vic. Like, is he going to be the long-term fit for the Los Angeles Kings, or could there be another opening there? We don't know. To the point about Adam Foote, is Adam Foote like there's going to be more openings in the offseason. I don't think Darche wanted to run the risk. As for the Vegas situation, no one's saying that Bruce Cassidy is a bad coach. Look what he's done with the last couple of teams. Like, he's got them to Stanley Cup Finals, and he's won the Stanley Cup with the Vegas Golden Knights. And, like, he does rub players a certain way, and that inevitably leads to his demise. To which I would always point to Scotty Bowman, and both of you guys have heard this cliche before. 364 days of the year, the Montreal Canadiens players all hated Scotty Bowman, hated him. And then on day 365, they got the rings. So no one's saying that Bruce Cassidy is a bad coach. Quite the opposite. He's an excellent coach, but he had reached the end with his relationship with those players. And I think that, Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee looked at that and said, if we don't make a move now, and make no mistake about it, this was a Hail Mary pass. This was a desperation play. Ignore the calendar here, folks. Ignore the schedule. We need to make a move now to supercharge this team. And that's why they went to John Tortorella. I always think back to something that Pat Quinn said coming out of the lockout of 2005. We were talking about the salary cap in the NHL. I said, this is really bad for coaches. I said, what do you mean? He goes, if you're a team now and you're salary capped and you're up against the cap and you can't make moves to improve your team, who walks the plank? It's coaches. Mm-hmm. He said, coaches now will be more vulnerable than ever before. Coaches will not win battles with players, and there will not be managers. Like, I think famously to the Jay Feaster, John Tortorella feud with the Tampa Bay Lightning, when essentially ownership stepped in and said, look, I'm not going to fire him and I'm not going to fire him. So you two guys need to figure out a way to work. Or John Tortorella with Vincent LeCavalier. It might be a better example. Look, I'm not trading him and I'm not firing you. So you two guys figure it out. I think those days are gone. It very much feels like those days are gone. And the most vulnerable person is usually the coach. And I think we saw more of that this season.
In terms of the hot seat,
mm-hmm.
Jeff, you had Adam Foote simply because of the organizational chaos that continues to go on in Vancouver.
Yep.
And Andrew Brunette, who I'm pretty surprised that he was able to stay on after the start that the Predators had, considering their season last year. But Neil, you were right on with Jim Hiller in Los Angeles, getting replaced by DJ Smith. And you had also said Andre Tourigny in Utah. But Tourigny did a great job getting the Mammoth into the playoffs.
Well, I think we were both right on these predictions. I think that First of all, Adam Foote, you don't know what's going to go on there, Jeff, in Vancouver. It's such a dysfunctional place. And that's before they traded Quinn Hughes.
Correct.
When you were doing this. I think Andrew Brunette had to be on the hot seat. He had to be with the payroll they had. But I think he did get it turned around this year to a certain degree, and they almost got in. They know they're patching their way through an era when they don't have a lot in the pipeline. So I like those two picks. Jim Hiller seemed to me to be a dead man walking right from the beginning of the season. New GM, high expectations in the marketplace. Andre Tournier, I think I was right there. I think he was on the hot seat, but you know what? He did a great job and got off the hot seat, and now the seat is kind of cool because he has proven he did a good job, and along with the help of Bill Armstrong. I think that it's great for Utah to be in the playoffs. So I don't have any problem with those picks that we made there.
The one thing that I wonder about, too, is if it were a different general manager than Barry Trotz, where, as we all know, Barry Trotz, legendary coach, Stanley Cup coach. If it was a general manager who hadn't been a coach before, would Brunette have been fired? Because Barry Trotz always went out of his way to say, this is not coaching, this is not coaching, this is not. How many managers would have the discipline to say that? After what I just said about coaches getting fired over the side of the side of the ship here quickly, I just can't help but thinking that so much of this is Barry Trotz sympathizing with his coach. And I mean, how many times did Barry say, this is my making, this is me, don't look at the coach? And I think that is a direct reflection of Barry's history as a head coach in the NHL and elsewhere as well. But I just wonder, like, if it was a manager who had never been a coach before, would we have seen a firing in Nashville?
I also think in Nashville, they've got a long history of unbelievable patience. David Poile, how many years were him and Barry Trotz together as the GM and coach? So that's where Barry Trotz patterned himself after. And then you get to the point where they make Barry Trotz the GM after, leaving and going to the Washington Capitals and then on to the New York Islanders. And then it's time for David to retire. So Barry Trotz comes in. And I think you're absolutely bang on right about him being a former coach. And if it was somebody else from out of the blue, yes, they might have not had the patience with Brunette, but I think that he hired him. Remember, when he first got the job, he said, this is my guy, Andrew Brunette, right away.
Yep.
And he stuck with him. And he says, just what you said, Jeff, this is not his making, this is my making. And patience runs really deep in that marketplace for whatever reason. With the Nashville Predators, we've only seen 2 GMs and a handful of coaches in the history of the team.
Yeah. One other thing that we need to, I think, put on the table for any discussion about Nashville all season long, it's a new owner. This is Bill Haslam too, which I would imagine Barry would have felt the pressure from ownership, because the last thing you want when you buy your new shiny toy is to see yourselves, playing in squalor around the bottom of the standings. And I'm sure there was some pressure for Barry Trotz to do something with the coaching situation or a massive trade or whatever. But to your point, like, the calling card in Nashville has always been patient. The problem now is, how do you exercise patience when these players aren't getting any younger?
Yeah, no, it's tough.
That's why I think this might be the first offseason of significant change with the Nashville Predators as they get ready for that transition to the next phase of what Nashville is going to be. And it's probably going to be led by, the Brady Martins of the year, who was their most recent first-round draft pick, these types of players. And then you're going to need some patience. I assure you, you will need some patience.
Let's hit some breakout players. And
sure.
We've only got a few minutes left, so I want to do these kind of in quick-hitting fashion.
Okay.
Breakout players for me. Juraj Slafkovsky, the Montreal Canadiens, career high, 30 goals, 73 points. And Luko Stastel, in net, 30 wins. And Anaheim gets into the playoffs with him taking over for John Gibson as the number 1 in Anaheim. Jeff, Adam Fantilli, career high 35 assists and 59 points, although he did drop in goals from 31 to 24. You also suggested Logan Cooley, who, although limited to 53 games this season, still managed 24 goals, one shy of his career high. And your goaltender, you agreed with me on Dostal, but you also said Jet Greaves, who started 53 games this year, 2.60 goals against average, 908 save percentage, really taking over as the number one in place of Elvis Merzlikins.
Yeah.
And for you, Neil, Dylan Guenther was your breakout player. Career highs with 40 goals, 73 points. You also had Matthew Nyes in there, and even though Toronto was all sorts of dysfunction this season, still had a career high 43 assists and 66 points. Oops, minus 29. And Spencer Knight was your goalie, who
good call.
had a 2.84 goals against and 902 save percentage for a team that is in the bottom quarter of the league in goals against average. So overall, pretty good job by us.
Not bad. Cutter Gauthier was outstanding with 40 goals. He took a real step in his career. Let me throw something else on the table here while we talk about Jet Greaves. Does he, because again, this is all just optics and how we feel. I don't know that anyone's measuring this. It looks to me like he might already have the fastest glove hand in the NHL. Good luck getting one past him on the glove side. This guy's glove is so good. Young, dynamic, athletic. You're right. He's solved the goaltending riddle that Columbus has had, even going back to Sergei Bobrovsky. I thought that Jet Greaves had a tremendous season. And now all of a sudden, Don Waddell can finally say, like, okay, that's one area I don't need to worry about. Like I'm in love with goalie cliches, guys, and my favorite goalie cliche comes from Harry Sinden, when Harry famously said, goaltending is like oxygen. I only think about it when I don't have it. And right now, Don Waddell does not need to worry about his goaltending. I thought Fantilli would have a better season than he had this year. I mean, now those sticks went dry. Those sticks went quiet towards the end, not just Fantilli, but Kirill Marchenko as well. Well, we know there's a great player in there, like a great player in there somewhere. Maybe that pops next season.
I just think that we did a great job in this. Vic, what was the exact date of that show? Just to let the listeners know how long ago this was.
Yeah, it was in early October, right before the start of the season.
So the season had not begun. Just so everybody knows, we didn't get a sample size and then go with these guys. I think that these picks were amazing. Vic, your two picks were great. I still think Fantilli was a good pick. Cooley, Greaves is excellent. Dylan Guenther, I could see him coming on last year.
What a shooter.
And nice, I got to say, yeah, he's minus 29, but what player on the Toronto Maple Leafs wasn't a heavy minus this year?
I was going to say, if you're a minus on the Toronto Maple Leafs, don't feel special.
Yeah.
Don't feel special.
Date of the show was actually October the 3rd. So let's just quickly hit some other team stuff before we wrap this up. Power shifts. Neil, you had Anaheim and Buffalo going up.
Wow.
Nice job there. Montreal.
Good job.
Going down. Boo.
Boo.
Jeff.
Yes,
you
what
had
I do.
Utah and Columbus going up. So you're 1-1 there.
50-50. All right, Demi.
Boston going down.
I sure did. Not a peep about the Sabres. I didn't want to dip my toe into that pool.
No, you didn't. And for myself, I had Ottawa and San Jose going up. I think Ottawa's almost pretty much at the same level they were last year. I did say I didn't think San Jose would make the playoffs, but that they would take a step forward, which they did.
Yep.
Going down, Columbus and Calgary. So I'm going to pat myself on the back for that because
wow.
I have so little to go with here.
Nice. No, that's a good one. Give yourself the rest of the week off and put a little something extra in your envelope this week, Vic. You've earned it.
Neil, where's that in my paycheck?
Yeah, it'll be in there. Just look hard.
It's time to finally spend your communion money, Neil. Let's go. You know what? Hang on. Can I mention one thing? Like, great call on the Swords. Like, great call on the Buffalo Sabres. Nobody saw that one coming, and no one saw it coming the way that it did with the manager firing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as if Jarmo got to work right away and brought in a full new cast of characters and a bunch of call-ups from Roger. No. Like, things just changed. Now, the winning streak started before Jarmo got hired. But at the same time, good call by you. because we always looked at Buffalo and said, man, so much potential, but they can't get it together. This was going to be the season that if they flamed out again, we'd wonder if Tage Thompson wanted out and Rasmus Dahlin wanted out, and they wouldn't be able to sign Alex Tuch, and they still might, but we'll see how that transpires. Good call by you.
You know, can I
good
add,
call by you.
Vic, let me add something to what Jeff just said, because this is a really hard thing to explain to people that don't understand. And it's just what he just said. You could say, well, how could firing the GM turn the team around mid-season? And the thing is that when you've got a group of individuals, I don't care if you're working at a widget company or you're playing hockey in the NHL, if you don't believe in the direction that's going, the place that you're working for, you don't believe in the overall direction that it's going for, it's hard to come into work every day and put up your best performance. And we've seen this in a couple other places. The Toronto Maple Leafs shouldn't have been as bad as they were this year. Just by losing Mitch Marner, they should have taken a step backwards. But let's face it, everything went dysfunctional. At the Rangers, everything went dysfunctional. And you're sitting around watching this stuff go on. At the Vancouver Canucks, everything goes dysfunctional. And guys are looking around going, they don't believe in where this thing is going. Once they start to believe, then the locker room seems to turn itself around if the talent is there. The reason I predicted Buffalo, guys, was just because they had too much talent not to get going at some point. I mean, they had to get going, and that's where I rolled the dice on them.
Smart play.
Anytime I hear widget, I'm thinking of Professor Barbet in Back to School. It's a widget. It doesn't
What's a widget? That's right.
What's a widget?
Well, we're living in fantasy land. God, I love that movie. All right, sorry. Go ahead, Vic. Yes.
I love when you break in like that, though.
Sorry, it's bad.
It's perfect.
Undisciplined.
Perfect.
Undisciplined.
Playoff stuff. Ins and outs. Jeff, you thought Detroit maybe sneaks in this year. Well, if it's not for March and April, they probably get in.
Wrong.
You thought Ottawa maybe gets in. It would be contingent on how Linus Ullmark played. Certainly good in the second part of the season. You also said that LA could miss the playoffs, but if they missed it, it would be with 100 points. And, of course, we all know how the pathetic division has performed this year.
Yeah.
Neil, Rangers in, maybe. Let's get that eraser out again. You also thought that Anaheim would get in at St. Louis's expense. That did
Good
happen. Call. I thought the Rangers would get in at Montreal's expense. That, of course, did not happen. And I thought Anaheim and Utah would both make the playoffs this year at the expense of St. Louis and Minnesota. So glass is half full there. In terms of the three-peat, we asked whether or not we thought that the Panthers would become first team since the Islanders to win at least 3 straight cups. We were no across the board. And our finals picks, I picked Dallas over Florida. I thought that the Panthers would be able to overcome the Barkov injuries. I didn't know that they would become a complete mash unit before the season ended. Yeah. So I'm still alive with Dallas, but I've got one foot in the grave already. But Jeff, you picked Vegas over Carolina. Yeah. Neil, you picked Vegas over Tampa Bay. But I don't think neither of you saw Vegas getting into the playoffs the way that they have with the coach that they currently have.
Nobody saw John Tortorella. Yeah. Like, you may have looked at it and said, because remember last year at the end of the season, there was like, I don't know if Cassidy survives this. This is going to be tough. We'll see. And Kelly McCrimmon really went to bat for his coach and prolonged the execution. He ended up winding his wristwatch on the way to the gallows pole for longer than many thought, but he kept the coach until the end of the season. I'll tell you, eventually this is going to work with Carolina. Eventually this has to work with Carolina, doesn't it? So that's why I'll stick with that pick, although I'm not getting the soap and warm water feeling about Vegas anymore.
Last word, Jeff, in 30 seconds. What has taken place during this 2025-26 regular season that has taken you completely by surprise?
For the first time, that's a good question. For the first time since 1996, save percentage in the NHL is under 900. It has officially swung advantage shooter, advantage offense, And no longer do the goaltenders enjoy an advantage in the NHL. So let's begin here on Wraparound, the conversation that we need to make the goalie equipment bigger. Not smaller, bigger. How about that, gentlemen?
Wow.
Neil, what do you have?
I got a couple of things, and they're not as good as Jeff's, I can tell you that. But one of the things is, take me completely by surprise that for the first time in history, Jeff, and you know history better than anyone, for the first time in history, the 3 New York City Metro teams will all miss the playoffs together.
Not good.
I didn't see that.
That's not good for the bottom line of the NHL either.
No.
That's not good for the marketing of the game. That's not good for the finances of the game. And that's also not good for escrow for the players at all. Can't have that.
I'll add a couple other things, Vic. There couldn't be a human being that wasn't caught off guard by Buffalo. The way they did it, especially starting the season in December.
Amazing.
You know, missing the first 2 months. And then the Dan Muse work was excellent in Pittsburgh. However, they've been in the playoff picture all year long, which is an indication of how good he did a job. The Philadelphia Flyers came on at the very end of the year and
Dan Vladar
played so darn well. And Rick Tocchet deserves a lot of credit there. And so that would be my roundup of the things that, really caught me by surprise. But mostly, we never would have predicted that all 3 of those teams would have missed the playoffs together in the New York City area.
One quick note on Philadelphia. By definition of what the Hart Trophy is, I don't think he wins it, but there better be some 3rd, 4th, 5th place votes for Dan Vladar. All those games that Philly shouldn't have won, and they won because of Dan Vladar, that is the definition of the most valuable player to your team. Again, he won't win it, but there better be some votes for Dan Vladar here.
Great stuff, Jeff. Just for me, Winnipeg Jets, 2nd consecutive President's Trophy winner to not make the playoffs next year. But, Jeff, we loved having you back just to look back at what we said in October. So all the best, and look forward to watching the playoffs and having you on again sometime downwind. You buzz anytime you want. I'm here for both you guys. Vic, always a treat. Thanks for hosting so well. And Neil, man, it's always good to catch up with you. And again, La Première Étoile, the first star, Le Chapeau, on Neil Smith, the vintage CBC Hockey Night in Canada with the old NHL logo. If you want to give us a profile, look at that beauty. Oh, the orange and black. Oh, my heart. Thanks, gentlemen.
See you, Jeff.
Take care, Jeff. Thank you. And a reminder that you are watching or listening to NHL Wraparound presented by UBS Financial Services, Inc. I always think it's so much fun to go back and actually look at the picks that we made at the start of the season. I don't think a lot of people actually go back and revisit that. And Jeff just has the perfect sense of humor, and just the way he carries himself is just terrific.
Oh, it is. And he's got an impeccable memory. Just a fun guy to have on a show with you.
Let's hit some personnel notes. Connor McDavid will win his 6th Art Ross Trophy, but the first since 2022-23. He enters Wednesday's finale with the Vancouver Canucks with 134 points, 4 better than the Lightning's Nikita Kucherov, who will have played 6 fewer games by the time the season is done, because I can't see McDavid sitting in a game that the Oilers actually need to secure home ice. Nathan MacKinnon, 3rd at 127 points. But here are the rest of the 100-point scorers this year. Macklin Celebrini, only his 2nd year, 112 points. Mark Scheifele reaches the century mark for the first time with 103. Nick Suzuki, the first Canadian to reach 100 points in 40 years. And Marty Necas and David Pasternak with 100 apiece.
Very impressive. Very, very impressive, especially the kid, the 19-year-old Celebrini, playing on a non-playoff team like San Jose. Just an amazing young man who we're going to enjoy watching for many, many years.
Unfortunately, I do have to withdraw my proposed candidacy for him for the MVP this year because they did make the playoffs, and that was really contingent upon them getting in.
Yeah, well, and it should be, because it doesn't matter how many points you get if your team doesn't make the playoffs. What was it all for?
Nathan MacKinnon will win the Rocket Richard Trophy for the first time. That's barring a historic night from McDavid in the season finale. MacKinnon with a career-high 53 goals, and he edges out Cole Caulfield, who had 51 this season for the Montreal Canadiens. McDavid with 48. And MacKinnon also with a league high plus 57. It'll be interesting to see if he plays meaningless game against Seattle on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll see what they try to do there. And Jared Bednar won't be making the decision because he's not coaching. Hopefully those facial fractures are healing and he'll be ready to get back behind the bench. But talk about an odd thing happening. Jared Bednar missing the last few games because of getting hit with a hockey puck. But we'll see who they dress tonight against Seattle. Seattle, of course, on their last game of the season, but also on a back-to-back as they played last night.
We saw Rick Bowness and his absolute frustration with his Columbus Blue Jackets after their season finale on Wednesday against the Washington Capitals. Todd McClellan wasn't quite as exasperated, but at the same time, embarrassed by his Red Wings' 8-1 loss in their season finale against the Florida Panthers on Wednesday evening. McClellan said both teams came in, nothing on the line, but you could see the Panthers' championship pedigree. It runs throughout their organization. And just a dreadful finish for Detroit, coming on the heels of a collapse, really, after the Olympic break.
And this is a loss to a team that's missing 14 regulars. 14 regulars out of their lineup. Dylan Larkin did not play for Detroit, but that's the only one that I could think of as I partly watched that game. It is embarrassing to Detroit if you're not going to put in any effort, if you're going to go down and just allow yourself to get spanked like that. But it was a meaningless game, as we know. Good for Florida to entertain their home fans and maybe set them off with a decent taste in their mouth.
14 regulars. You know, you could have played for Florida last night.
I doubt it.
Just two quick injury notes. Miro Heiskanen, defenseman for the Dallas Stars, is expected to be ready for the Dallas opener against Minnesota. He was injured on a hit from Ryan Hartman on April the 9th. And Brady Tkachuk, who we thought might play in the Senators' final game against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Wednesday, wound up not playing, although he did participate in a full workout on Tuesday. Remember, he was injured against the New York Islanders over the weekend.
Yeah, and good that he's back because that was scary. He lost his vision. It wasn't really an injury more than a medical happening, but apparently he's back and ready to go.
I was going to wrap up with something about the Maple Leafs securing that top 5 lottery position by having an 0-6-1 finish. This is how they sent Joe Bowen off last night. But why ruin a good show?
Yeah, exactly. Why talk about that?
And that will do it for today. Special thanks to Jeff Marek from the Sheet Podcast for joining us. And thank you to UBS Financial Services, Inc. NHL Wraparound and UBS Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated. UBS Financial Services, Inc. is a sponsor of NHL Wraparound. No other affiliation, relationship, or endorsement is made, suggested, intended, or should be implied or inferred between UBS and NHL Wraparound or any of the individuals or businesses and or their respective products and services appearing in this program.
And we want to say thank you to all of you listening right now or watching on YouTube. If you want to touch base with us, I'm Neil at NHLWraparound.com. He is Vic at NHLWraparound.com. All of our podcasts are on all podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and, of course, YouTube. If you get a chance, leave a review and subscribe if you're on YouTube. We've got polls going on YouTube. You can also find us on X, Instagram, TikTok, at radiate.tv, and on the new platform, Buzzer, BZZR.com.
Our website is NHLWraparound.com. We have our final installment on Thursday of Smith's Picks, which are also available on audio. You are carrying a record of 573, 317, and 124. So considering that we didn't start this right at the beginning of the season, you have a chance by winning 2 out of 3 on Thursday, reaching 575 wins.
A 575 game winner. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun doing that. I would continue on during the playoffs, but maybe it's just best to be a regular season thing.
For this year. We'll reconsider a year from now.
Okay.
We have 6 spring cleanings left with the New York Islanders, Columbus Blue Jackets, Washington Capitals, Nashville Predators, San Jose Sharks, and Winnipeg Jets. They will be coming out as quick takes over the next couple of weeks. Remember that Stanley Cup Day will start on Monday, April 20th. And on Friday, we look forward to welcoming back TSN's Craig Button for our 2026 Stanley Cup preview.
And that's going to be a lot of fun being with Craig again. Another one like Jeff Marek, a Canadian with a lot of good humor.
Enjoy the final night of the regular season. We'll speak to you with our preview on Friday.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.